Early morning. A thin mist covered the Texas sky, casting a gentle light that made the asphalt road look as though it was still asleep. On Highway 19, a black SUV sat motionless on the emergency lane, its engine still running. The tinted windows reflected the dull, overcast sky above. Inside the car, a middle-aged man in a suit wearing sunglasses remained perfectly still. Nothing seemed out of place. No one had called for help. Just a silence too perfect to ignore. And that was what caught the patrol's attention. At 8:13 a.m., a local police cruiser rolled by and slowed down. Two officers, one young, fresh out of the academy, less than 3 years, and one older who had spent 20 Christmases working this same stretch of road. The young officer frowned. Why park there without emergency lights on? Could be a drug surveillance op, maybe? Let me handle this. The police cruiser stopped behind the SUV, lights flashing. The door opened, boots hitting the pavement. There was nothing in that pale morning light to suggest that in just a few minutes they would make the biggest mistake of their careers. Step out of the vehicle. Hands on your head, the young officer shouted, gun drawn, decisive as though dealing with a dangerous suspect. The man in the SUV sat still, then slowly lowered the window a few centimeters. A calm hand reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a card, dark blue silver trim. In the light, it clearly read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Clearance. But the young officer didn't care. He yelled even louder, I don't care who you are. Get out of the vehicle now. And that was when the first spark of the incident was lit. A federal agent's clearance card. A county deputy's authority. A single moment where if either man had blinked just a fraction slower, it might not have stopped at just wrongful arrest. The badge gleamed in the morning sunlight. It didn't need explanations or presentations. The anti-counterfeit coating and the embossed FBI seal alone were enough to make any law enforcement officer pause for a beat. But not everyone did. The young officer barely glanced at the badge. He didn't ask, didn't verify, just frowned, as though Mr. Kane had handed him a supermarket loyalty card. FBI, he sneered. I could print that at the copy shop down the street. The comment made the older officer beside him hesitate. He looked more closely at the middle-aged man sitting calmly in the car. Still the same eyes, no fear, no anger, no need to justify. Just a terrifying calm, as if he knew exactly who he was, and he knew just as clearly that the man in front of him did not. Bang, the car door was yanked open. The young officer pulled Mr. Kane roughly out of the seat. Mr. Kane didn't resist. He simply tucked the badge back into the inner pocket of his jacket, a small action, like a man filing away his name because he knew no one would bother to get it right. Hands on the hood, the officer snapped. I'm going to frisk you now. Are you carrying a weapon? Yes. Kane answered, his voice deep and unhurried, never raised. I am a senior investigator. The weapon is registered. Serial number DSH 42719, issued by the Federal Armory 7 weeks ago. It has been reported to the Dallas FBI unit in advance. And you have no authority to detain me without probable cause of criminal activity. The young officer froze for a moment. Then he barked. Don't think those fancy words are going to scare me, mistake upon mistake. What had begun as a frown had now escalated into a full-blown operational incident. Kane was handcuffed and placed in the back seat of the patrol car. No longer just a suspicious stranger. Now he was a federal agent illegally detained. You're under arrest for suspicious behavior and refusing to cooperate. The young officer said, his voice rising as though he needed to convince himself he was doing the right thing. Mr. Kane said nothing in reply, no resistance, his hands behind his back, cold steel, accepting the cuffs. Not out of submission, he knew the truth didn't need to thrash or fight back. Click. The cold cuffs locked around his left wrist by the book, then his right wrist. Tight. As if to declare some kind of power to a man they never really understood. The older officer stepped back silent, but his eyes were full of hesitation. He had seen men like this before, not criminals, but agents who stood in rooms he had only heard about on television. As they searched Mr. Kane, the young officer pulled out a card unlike any he had ever seen in his life. No name, no photo, just a faint line of text, clearance Omega-6, level red, and a symbol, a triangle within a circle marked with a special identifier. A card held by fewer than 30 people in the entire national security system. "What the hell is this?" the young officer demanded, frowning. "Some FBI playing card." Mr. Kane turned his head, speaking softly. "It's a pass to places you've never been allowed to imagine." The older officer stepped closer, his expression shifting as he saw the card. Not just pale, he looked as though he'd seen a summons from another world. He had heard of it. He had read of it. And he knew that if this man was real, they had just committed a professional error that would never be erased. "Stop this," he whispered to his partner. "Something's wrong." But it was too late. Mr. Kane had already been pushed into the back seat of the patrol car, the door slammed shut. A temporary sentence for a man who held access to the nation's most secret corridors. The Black Ridge County Police Station, a place so quiet that last week's bar fight had been logged as an unusual incident in the official reports. They weren't used to suspects with a file longer than a page, and certainly not to seeing an Omega-6 clearance card. When the young officer placed the card on the evidence table, the older officer exhaled softly, his voice almost a whisper. "My God, it's real." He quietly left the room, heading straight to Chief Willard's office, a seasoned man nearing retirement, known for collecting old badges and drinking strong black coffee. Chief Willard was reading the newspaper. "You need to see this," the young officer said. "The man we arrested this morning." Willard took the card. In just 5 seconds, his face became rigid. His fingers trembled slightly as they traced the edge of the card, as though he were touching something that should not exist in this quiet, small-town world. "Who made the arrest?" "Davis, the young officer who joined us last year." "Did he check the card?" "No, sir." "He even pulled the man out of the car and cuffed him." Willard stood up abruptly, picked up the internal phone, and quickly pressed 3 buttons. "Dallas FBI Field Office, I need urgent verification for an Omega-6 clearance red level. Name Alexander Kane." There was silence on the other end for exactly 7 seconds. Then a woman's voice spoke, calm and emotionless. "Secure the scene. Do not engage further with him. A federal liaison team is en route. And if you want to see any funding for next year, release him. Immediately." Willard let out a sharp breath and set the receiver down without another word. He walked swiftly out of his office, ignoring the expectant looks in the station. In the holding cell, Mr. Kane still sat, his back against the wall, hands resting on his knees, his gaze neither judgmental nor afraid. Just a kind of silence that made everyone else in the room feel smaller. Willard pushed open the door and stepped in. "Mr. Kane, I sincerely apologize," he said. "We didn't know." Kane raised a hand, cutting him off. "I know. But that doesn't change the fact that you didn't know." 9:22 a.m. Inside the Black Ridge County Police Station, the air had grown thick and heavy. Young Officer Davis sat slumped over the report desk, still not comprehending what had just occurred, only that Chief Willard had stopped reading the newspaper halfway through. And in Black Ridge, that was like the sound of a fire alarm. In the command office, Chief Willard picked up the phone once more. This time he didn't call the regional FBI office, he called the Federal Verification Center directly in Langley. Someone picked up. No introductions. No questions about who Willard was. Only a single question asked, "Is the prisoner's name Alexander J. Kane, born November 4th, 1962? Willard answered, "Yes." 5 seconds of silence. Then the voice replied, slow, deliberate, and so clear it was chilling. "The person you are holding is the federal chief supervisor in charge of organized crime analysis for the Southwest. He has clearance for all top-secret files. Detaining him without an official reason will be reported to the Office of Administrative Investigations and considered an obstruction of national security operations." Willard swallowed hard. His hand tightened around the phone. His voice was barely steady. "I confirm, and we will take immediate action." As soon as he hung up, he didn't issue an order. He simply stepped out of his office and personally went to unlock the holding cell. Every other officer, including Davis, stood frozen. No one dared even to breathe too loudly. The door to the holding cell swung open. Mr. Kane looked up, his eyes as calm as if time itself couldn't touch him. "Mr. Kane." Willard spoke, bowing his head slightly. "This was a serious error on our part. You're free to leave immediately. Your car is being returned to its original position." Kane rose to his feet, adjusted his collar. No rush, no anger, no reaction. He simply stepped out as if he'd just completed a task, though in truth he hadn't even started one. At the doorway, he paused. He turned to look at Officer Davis, the young man who had cuffed him. Their eyes met for a few seconds. No resentment, no revenge. Just a silent warning that didn't need to be spoken. No sirens, no alarms, no shouting. Only 3 words spoken by a man nearing retirement, words that made the entire police station freeze like statues. "Let him go. Now. Immediately." Willard offered no explanation. No one dared to ask. Only Davis, the young officer, stood there dazed, as if a page had been torn from the rulebook he hadn't yet gotten to read. "Who is he?" he mumbled, almost asking himself. When the cell door opened, no one carried the keys. Kane had already removed the handcuffs, no one knew when. The cuffs lay on the chair, unlocked, unbent, as if whoever wore them had never truly been bound. Kane stood up, walked straight out. No glances back, no complaints, no demands for compensation, no written grievances. He didn't need to do any of that. Because the moment he walked out, the entire system would figure out how to carry the weight of its own mistakes. The older officer by the door tilted his head slightly. Davis, his hand still on his belt, caught between resistance and surrender. But then Kane paused. For just a split second, he turned to Davis and said gently, "You're still young. Learn to ask questions before you act. Those who know how to ask tend to live longer than those who only know how to give orders." Davis didn't reply. He just nodded, swallowing a lesson that had landed squarely on his forehead. The station door swung open. Light streamed in, shining on the back of the man who had just left. No escort cars, no flashing lights, just an ordinary step from a man who didn't need to prove who he was. Mr. Kane stepped through the station door. The morning sunlight slanted across his silver hair. No one followed, no cameras. Only a young officer standing behind him, gripping his belt as if he were holding on to his own pride. Davis had imagined Mr. Kane would turn back, would get angry, would shout at him, would sue the police station. But no. Instead of an outburst, Mr. Kane turned his head once, just once, and looked at him. That look was neither cold nor resentful. It was like a mirror reflecting everything Davis hadn't yet seen in himself. The impatience, the arrogance of someone who thought he knew it all, and more than that, the naivety of someone who had never been tested by real power. That look said, "I don't need to tell you that you're wrong, because when you look at me, you already know." Davis looked away, But the feeling didn't fade. It smoldered like in that brief moment he had been awakened without a single word. Mr. Kane kept walking. His shadow stretched long across the pavement. The black SUV had been returned to its spot waiting. No one needed to open the door, he got in by himself. Started the engine. Drove off slowly. No sirens. No screeching tires. Just a trail of silence rolling away, leaving behind a look that no one in the station would ever forget. 2 weeks later, in a small meeting room at the end of the hallway where photos of former team leaders lined the walls, Davis sat quietly, his back straight, his uniform crisply pressed. On the table was a promotion file, his name boldly printed. Chief Willard entered. He didn't say much. He placed a single sheet of paper on the table. Davis looked down. It was an amended performance review under the section Situational Judgment. Did not meet command standards in situations involving federal factors. One line, not many words, but enough to end the chance. We'll keep you in your current position, Willard said. Not because you're useless, but because you don't yet know when to stop. Davis swallowed hard. He knew that if he had just paused for 5 seconds that day, asked a superior, checked the files, verified the badge, perhaps he would be the deputy team leader by now. But no. He had chosen to give orders before he understood what was really happening. No one scolded him. No one demoted him. But in the days that followed, there were no commendations from above, no files sent his way for review, only silence spreading like a rumor that didn't need to be spoken aloud. He showed up on time. He worked without mistakes. But he knew that no one would choose him to lead in any critical situation again. 3 months later, at a closed hearing of the National Security Committee, Mr. Alexander Kane was invited to speak as a special advisor, someone who had once led many top-secret federal operations. There were no recording devices in the meeting room, only paper pens and the memories of those present. A young senator asked, "In over 30 years of service, did you ever feel treated like an ordinary man?" The question was gentle, almost a way to draw a smile, but the room fell silent. Mr. Kane looked up. He didn't answer right away. He just nodded slightly. Yes. Once. His voice was low, just enough to be heard. But not because I was underestimated. It was because they refused to look closely enough. No one asked further. No one mentioned that time. No one brought up the small police station in Black Ridge. No one questioned why the Omega-6 badge had been swiped again to erase a single day from his schedule. Because everyone understood what had happened. Mr. Kane had forgiven, but he would never forget. After the hearing, someone asked him if he had apologized that day, would you have let it go? Kane gazed into the distance. He was young. I only regret that he had the chance to learn it the right way, but chose the shorter path instead. And that was all he ever said. No article ever published it. No file ever recorded it. Only a memory remains, living in the silent gaze of a man once handcuffed by the very badge meant to protect the nation. After the 3-month hearing, an internal memo was circulated among 3 agencies, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the Office of Executive Security. Its title read, "Incident of Wrongful Detainment of Senior Personnel. Handled internally, no public disclosure needed." It was just a single page. In the electronic records of the Black Ridge Police Station, there is no entry bearing the name Alexander Kane. No arrest record. No holding cell photo. No procedural report. Everything had either been deleted or had never existed in the first place. But some things don't reside in systems and require no official stamp for validation. They live in the strange silence whenever someone mentions July 14th, in the averted gaze of Davis whenever he is assigned to inspect federal IDs, in the quiet caution of other officers when they encounter someone wearing a federal badge. Because they know there was once a time they arrested the wrong man. And that man did not get angry. He simply walked away with a calmness that made them feel small for the rest of their lives. There are rumors that after the incident, every police precinct in the district upgraded to a new federal authentication system, one in which any special grade ID card would immediately trigger an alert if scanned incorrectly. A small change paid for by a very costly lesson. He didn't appear in the news, didn't hold a press conference, and no viral video ever circulated. He never revealed the identity of the young officer who had handcuffed him. Alexander J. Kane, Federal Chief Supervisor, chose to exit the stage in silence, but the system could never forget him. Since that event, all officer training centers have added a new module to their advanced curriculum titled Handling Exceptional Cases, identifying and verifying ultra-classified federal clearance. Beneath it, a red note reads, K Protocol, no questioning, no delay, no interference. No one officially explains what the K means. There is no name attached. But everyone in the profession understands K stands for Kane. At many police departments, internal drills now begin with a familiar question. If someone presents a red Omega badge that you do not recognize, what is the first thing you do? And the only correct answer is always call a superior. Do not act independently. No one says it aloud. No one puts his name on a wall of honor. But in confidential reports, the name Kane has become a point of reference, the man who once made an entire system examine itself, not with a weapon, but with calm and a mind like steel. And the strange thing is, even those who have never met him now retell the story as a passed-down lesson, its origin unclear, but its ending universally understood. 7th floor, Headquarters for Federal Counterintelligence and Security. Washington, D.C. Conference Room Number 3. Unmarked from the outside, secured only by a retinal scanner. The room is nearly empty, save for a long conference table and a single photograph hanging on a wall of cold stone. The photograph shows a middle-aged man walking away from a small police station. The lighting casts a backlit silhouette revealing only part of his face. No title, no gilded frame. Just a single understated inscription etched into the lower right corner. Sometimes power doesn't need to be acknowledged, only remembered. That photograph is never referenced in press briefings, nor does it appear in internal documentation. Yet every newly appointed director is brought to this room just once to see it. Not to admire it, but to remember one misstep doesn't merely cost a promotion, it can force the entire organization to rewrite a chapter of its procedures. Kane's name is not attached to the photograph. It doesn't need to be. Because those who know it will never forget. And those who don't should not be working here. Somewhere beyond the Capitol, Alexander J. Kane, after 33 years of service, now lives quietly with his wife in a house by the forest. No one disturbs him. No one asks questions. But the system still speaks his name through the caution exercised in every approach toward a stranger bearing a red badge. There are stories that need no drama, no named hero, just a well-timed glance to remind us of respect, empathy, and humility. Today's story is not merely about a wrongful arrest. It is a glimpse into a world where power and character coexist, and where silence can echo louder than any shout. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. Every view, every comment from you is a quiet reminder that we still care about what's right, even when it doesn't make noise. If you feel this story is worth sharing, leave a comment, share it with someone, or simply acknowledge it with a quiet nod in your heart. Because perhaps you might be the one who pauses and looks a little deeper, before judging someone the next time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel where we continue telling stories about integrity, justice, and the human spirit, where not everyone in power is right, and not everyone silent is weak. See you in the next video.